Michigan State has the Big Ten Player of the Year in its backcourt, the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year in the backcourt. But how do those guys stack up against UConn's backcourt? Hey, how are you folks? Jason Horowitz, glad to be with you on Destination Detroit, presented by Denny's, brought to you by Denny's new Grand Slamwich. Everything you love about the Grand Slam, it's now in a sandwich. Glad to be joined by my colleague, CBS Sports' Tim Brando, CBS College Sports, Steve Lappas. And guys, when you talk about the Michigan State backcourt and the UConn backcourt, there's a lot of matchups here, Steve. Let's start with A.J. Price and Travis Walton. Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year in Walton. How does he match up against A.J. Price?
Well, Walton did an unbelievable job on Terrence Williams last week, holding him to 1-7. But this is a little different because A.J. Price can shoot the three as well as go off the dribble, whereas Terrence Williams, I think their goal was just to keep him in front. So Travis Walton's a great defender, but he's going to play against a guy that really doesn't have a lot of weaknesses to his game, Tim.
I got to tell you, too, Steve, well, the thing about this backcourt matchup is that, in a sense, it's how well a backcourt player backdoor cuts or posts up. Because if Tom Izzo gets done what he wants to get done, and that's bring Goran Suton out and get the beat and some of those other bigs away from the basket, that's going to allow lanes for Kalin Lucas, or Walton, those guys to get what they want to get done around the basket. So I think it's actually an inside-out, outside-in kind of situation. So it's not going to be your typical guard matchup. Going back to your point, though, as it relates to the Connecticut guards, let me tell you something. A.J. Price is playing on a very, very high level right now. And if you talk about a guy that's driven, the so-called on-a-mission player, if you will, he's that guy. He's been willing his way through this tournament to this point and really making people look bad in his wake. So right now, even though Lucas has played well, handled pressure, the most consistent player in the backcourt in this tournament to this point, for me, has been Price.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, A.J. Price, Steve, in that mold of the New York City guard, the tough guard. Kemba Walker showed that in the game against Missouri. But we asked Mr. Kalin Lucas about what a Detroit guard is. You know, all the talk about New York City guard, tough guard. He said, we can score. We're great. Look at Jalen Rose. We like to do that. Does that work in this game, knowing that Tom Izzo wants to keep the game in the 60s?
You know, good players are good players. And I think Tom Izzo is going to try and run a little bit in this game because I think creating some space and getting some easy baskets, you don't want to go against the beat the whole game. So I think they're going to get it out to their guards early in transition, I think, and try and get some easy baskets.
You don't win, Steve, if you don't get easy baskets against UConn. Now, the idea that Michigan State still wants to keep the game in the 60s is probably still accurate, but you got to know when to push the pedal, put the pedal to the metal, and when to kind of back off. And I think that's where Lucas has been tremendous in this tournament as well, is understanding and making the right judgment calls as he's bringing the ball up and down the floor. You don't want 2-on-3 breaks, 1-on-3 breaks, but if you get a 3-on-1, you better take it if you're Michigan State.
You know, I think there's two guys here, Steve, that have been left out a little bit in terms of when you talk about the backcourts of these two games, because all the press has been about Lucas and Walton and can they hang with Price and Walker. You look at two other guys, one on each side. Darrell Summers and what he's done for Michigan State in this tournament, and then Craig Auster and his senior leadership.
Craig Auster is Mr. Steady, and he's really stepped up since Dyson has been hurt. He's not a big scorer, but on a given night, he can score for you. So not a great three-point shooter, but on a given night, he can make them. Darrell Summers, on the other hand, and Chris Allen, really, they have two guys coming off the bench to give them that added depth and firepower. Craig Auster, steady, but not the firepower of those two guys.
I give the advantage to Michigan State in that area because I think Summers is the most undervalued player the Spartans have. He's able to hit shots that, you know, when he launches, I feel like it's going in at this stage. I really do. Now, we'll see with this new arena and the depth perception with the basketball on the 50-yard line, but they've played in it before. I think he'll be all right with it. And I think Connecticut, to be honest with you, if they're ever going to be exposed for the loss of Adrian, this is where it could happen because Summers is good enough to really expose that loss.
And, of course, we'll see if that plays a role because every time UConn has gotten to the Final Four, they've won the Final Four.
Yes,
so we'll see. Real quickly, advantage backcourt, Michigan State or UConn?
I'm going to go UConn because of Kemba Walker and A.J. Price having more wide-range games. Summers is a great shooter coming off the bench. I think those two guys and Austrie have a little bit more all-around.
Can't disagree. Check mark. But by the scantest of margins.
All right, we'll see how it all plays out in the backcourt. Of course, it's not just the backcourt. Be sure to check out the segment breaking down the UConn-Michigan State front court as well. All here on Destination Detroit, presented by Denny's. Bring a friend to Denny's on April 8th from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and get a free Grand Slamwich when you buy a Grand Slam. All that here on Destination Detroit presented by Denny's. For Tim Brando and Steve Lappas, I'm Jason Horowitz. Take care, folks.